cases have very little evidence, to say, here, look at this case. These is all points of evidence to show that this really is haunted. Even when we have anomalies, the anomaly itself doesn't conclude that it's a spirit or it's a plasma ball. It just concludes that we don't have an explanation for this phenomenon. Our EMF went up, so that just meant we had EMF that went up. But it's not conclusive that it's, Aunt Jenny trying to tell you a message about the insurance policy.
Well, and it's sort of like, just to liken it, it's if you can't actually bring in a UFO or a gray to have a chat with you, it's really hard to prove that it really is caused by that.
Correct. You have, 3 people had this same experience unbeknownst to one another.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it is. And
actually, that's used in law enforcement too.
And you could say, but it's not evidence per se. It's just circumstantial or coincidental, but really with very low probability of actually being a coincidence.
Exactly.
I guess we learn to work with the words that aren't yes it is and no it isn't. I can't definitively say that, we went in your house and we found a spirit and we put that spirit and the spirit moved into the light. It's just one psychic's interpretation of what they think happened, and no one will ever know whether that was true or not.
Well, how does one qualify to be a psychic for a serious paranormal investigation group?
So what we'll do, when we do the assessment part, where we're just interviewing, the team that goes in is usually what we call the techs. They're just going to be taking readings and doing the measuring of the walls to make a floor plan. That's when we'll bring in someone who is thinking they are sensitive, that have had an indication that they can sense more than most people, and we'll have them go in. And we won't hook them up with a video team and a tech team. We'll have them go through with an observer. Usually that observer is a psychic. And we have them go through, and they'll do exactly what the psychics do, just basically speak out loud about what they're sensing in each room. And we document that. And then we will we review what they've felt and picked up. We'll compare that later on with the investigation when the psychic has gone through and what that psychic has picked up. And so as we do this multiple times and we see that the things that they're picking up on are similar to what the other psychics have picked up on, then that just increases their weight factor of credibility, because there's no real test, in my opinion, that someone could take and say, oh, good, you were able to get 6 cards out of 5. You're definitely a psychic, and I need you to go in and see if there's spirits in this house.
Sure. And the fact that of course, there's always the problem, just because somebody could guess cards, they might not be useful at all in a situation where there's something going on in a house.
Exactly. To me, it's working with energies, and if it's precognition of knowing what the next card is, that's not going to help you unless you're trying to guess what the next spirit's going to be that's coming into the room. And if I've had 5 psychics in the same house, I get a different slice of what's going on. Each one has a different way of interpreting or sensing. Some it's hearing things. Some it's I see a person and he's from the 50s. Some people it's a male energy, it's a female, and it seems angry. And so I get motion from some. I get history of who was there, the residual energies. It's always interesting to see how each person has a different means of kind of interacting with that. And there's no wrong or right. If it comes together and it matches the interview and what they've experienced, then that's the interesting part. It's like, I know myself that there's no way they could have picked up on that. If they pick up on a Civil War battle and I go in and there's all these Civil War heirlooms all over the room, I kind of think maybe they just looked around. But normally what they're picking up has nothing to do with the surroundings that they're in. So it's one of those things that still amazes me.
So it all comes down to the on-scene interview and the contacts.
Yes.
I'm curious to know what is the strangest physical phenomena that you or your investigators or your psychics have actually picked up on in a residence. If you had to pick something that really stands out in your mind, what was it?
Wow. That should be an easy question, but it's not.
Ah.
There's...
Well, I mean, have you ever had physical phenomena, whereas you mentioned that things don't always happen when you're there, the way they're reported by the witnesses. What kinds of things have happened when you and the team are there?
There was one home where they were being basically assaulted, I guess, by these energies at night. It would keep everybody awake. They'd see a woman standing at the foot of the bed. She would scare the kids so they'd be crying, walking up and down the hallways. The kids in the basement were being terrorized. Some of the kids slept in the basement, some on the main floor, the parents on the third floor. And while we were setting up our cameras, we'd done the interview a week earlier. We all shown up in the daytime and running all our cables and setting up the equipment. And I'm outside. We always set up base outside. And whoever's at base is able to basically see where everybody is in the house, hear everything that's going on in the house. So we have headphones, and with the mixer I can turn up or lower the microphones so I can hear the room I want to listen to. And usually we just listen to all the rooms simultaneously. They are being recorded discreetly, so I can play back any one room. But with headphones, I have to kind of listen to everything. And so while I was in the garage doing all the wiring, the team was inside in the living room. They had this plastic table. On top of the plastic table was a fairly, I guess, a 2-foot cube box filled with empty water bottles for some soccer fundraising thing. And two of the children were in their room, and they had some emotional things going on with the kids. So there were special needs kids, and we were setting up a camera in that room. Well, because of the change to their pattern, this was just unbelievable shattering of their worlds. So they started screaming, "Get it out, get it out, get it out." At the apex of their screaming, when they're both, getting louder and louder till they couldn't get any louder, at the moment that both of them screamed at the same time, in the adjoining room, that table with that 2-foot square box of water bottles physically jumped in the air and landed back down again.
That's pretty convincing.
But this is more like a psychokinesis, where the energies of the living were, when that happened, then it moved some physical object in the other room. But of course, we were setting up equipment. It hadn't been completely set up yet. So we have the investigators in the room. No one was looking at it, but two people were standing beside it and felt it go up and go down on them. And it wasn't like, oh my God, we almost, we could have lost Jimmy. It was just a plastic table with a box of empty water bottles. But it was very significant in what actually happened. So that told us that many of the things going on was a result of the emotions of these two kids, that when they had bad days, they had activity. When they changed their medications, most of the activity stopped. There were still other elements going on, but the physical elements seemed to have dissipated. So that was the most interesting.
The implications of that are really powerful.
Truly. And it's unbeknownst usually to the catalyst.
I would like to kind of lead in. I understand that you brought us some special clips to listen to related to some actual cases.
Correct. So we always, I said, we do a lot with audio. The EVPs that I brought were from one of our earlier investigations. And this is one of the cases where we actually blindfolded our psychics so they didn't know where they were going. The reason being, if you were driving in your car and you passed the sign saying, "Welcome to Amityville," and you were in a paranormal group, you'd have a pretty good idea of where you were going. Mm-hmm. So to remove that influence of the visual cues of the town we were in, we blindfolded them and then drove into that town. So no one knew where they were. So while one of the psychics was in the passenger seat of the car, the driver had left the car. She's sitting by herself. with the videographer behind her. We let the video run so we knew what they were talking about. If someone inadvertently said where we were, we would be able to know that. So while this video was running, the clip 1 is the first EVP that we picked up. Oh, and I should explain, EVP is electronic voice phenomenon. This is where an audio recording picks up a voice on the tape that you hear on playback that wasn't acoustically there at the time of the recording. So it's like a ghost voice. And that's the most interesting phenomenon to me because I've seen it on the audio recording, yet I've been there at the time that the recording was being made. And I know that this voice wasn't there. So if you could play clip 1.
Could we try clip number 1?
Mm-hmm, please.
On my dad's side of the family. On my dad's side of the family. On my dad's side of the family.
So at the beginning, you heard this gentleman say, on my dad's side of the family. And then you hear this husky woman's voice. So if you play clip 1A, it's just the EVP part.
Okay, go ahead.
So normally when I play an EVP, I don't want to tell people what I think I've heard. I'm not able to interview the source of that voice, so I can't get the confirmation. So, but being radio, I'll tell you, we think it says, help us.
Wow.
And then on that same investigation, so our investigators will wear a digital voice recorder around their neck. And so as they're walking around the scene, if they're taking little personal notes, I'm by the ravine, I just dropped my pencil, whatever, they can listen to it and know what happened and, timestamps and such. And so if you play clip 2, it's 2 investigators and one of them's asking the other one, are you looking at your pictures? And she responds with just kind of a mumbly, and then you hear a beep beep, and that's her camera. The first voice you hear isn't the investigator. That is the EVP. And if you could play number 2.
What are you talking about me now? Are you looking at your pictures? No. What are you talking about me now? Are you looking at your pictures? No.
And so it's incredible to have an EVP that is that long. So there's no doubt which part it is that we're speaking of. Clip 2A is the first EVP.
What are you talking about me now? What are you talking about me now?
And we're able to make out what that said because we feel it's saying, you talking about me now, in a very, I call it a fast talker voice, like, talking about me now. And then just before the, sorry?
No, I was just going to say that raises the hair on the back of my neck.
It's when you hear it, it's nothing. But then when you realize it was recorded and that voice wasn't there at the time of the recording, it does the same thing to us. And then the second EVP is not as easy to hear, and that's 2B, if you could play that. And that was part of that whole segment. So it's hard to hear the first consonant. But because of – so here's where we're doing a little conclusion jumping. Because this was the location where this person was thought to have tossed bodies into a ravine, we thought that EVP says dig us up. But the dig part almost sounds like a T, like a take us up. If you could play 2B again, listening for dig us up or take us up. And were you able to pick that up?
So were you ever able to establish the history of the ravine one way or the other?
This was one where, short of actually having ground-penetrating radar, we won't know. But that was the story of Starvation Heights, where Linda Hazard, back in like 1912, had taken in patients, kind of like the Dr. Kellogg thing, homeopathic treatments. And she would starve her patients, that the body would then take over and purge itself of impurities. And then you would get healthy again because you've burned away your own impurities. Well, she would have them sign over power of attorney. So once they didn't get better and died, the good doctor was then found wearing her patient's jewelry, clothing, belongings. So is it a doctor who had a series of failures, or was it someone who was intentionally doing this?
A serial killer.
Yeah. And they guess there's about 30 people went missing in her care. And so it was presumed that some of the people disappeared in this ravine. And there definitely was the feeling of, help us. And then the last clip that I brought, clip number 3, this was a woman whose dad was thought to have abandoned her when she was a young child. All her life, she thought her dad had abandoned her. Just in the year 2002 about, it was found out that he didn't run away, that it was thought that his father, her grandfather, had murdered him. He disappeared, and funny enough, when the grandfather passed away, part of his personal belongings that they found was, I'll call him Junior, Junior's driver's license and Social Security card. Most people don't leave that behind. And so her brother had paranormal signs or visitations from his dad. She never did. So when we were at the site where Grandpa had apparently thought to have buried Junior, we asked if there was any messages for this woman, and this EVP is the message. So it's not as clear as the other EVPs, but yet it's very, at least it was, when I first heard it, I didn't need anyone to tell me what they thought it was. We feel it says, Cindy, I love you. If you could play that one more time. And to this day, Cindy has a voice recorder with that clip. And to her, there's no doubt in her mind that that was her dad giving her that sign that she's been seeking.
And think of the power that has in her life.
Yeah, it truly did. The things that woman had gone through because of this, many of the cases that we work on become very, very close with us because of the depth of the emotions that everyone is going through during these things.
This is so powerful, and I have to say that at this time it would be appropriate for us to take a break. So I need to announce that this is the Inception Radio Network, and this is a program brought to you by the Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council, presenting the world's great mysteries, and these are some of the more profound, and we'll be back after the break. This is the Inception Radio Network and a broadcast of EPIC, the Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council. I am your host, James Clarkson, and we're continuing to interview Darren Thompson, President of WSPIR, the Washington State Paranormal Investigations and Research Organization. And right before we went on break, we heard a really powerful story, and I guess it's one of those where it doesn't really matter what doubters or skeptics might want to tell you. I was thinking about this over the break. I keep thinking of the phrase unfinished business, and the fact that my wife is a hospice nurse, and she has told me so many stories of people who by every medical measurement should have passed on, but they hang on because they have one more person that they just have to see, and they have to say goodbye, or they have to reconcile something before they pass over. And it just strikes me how profound it is to be able to get that on an audio.
It really is. It's very emotional. You couldn't help but when we're involved with the story, of course, we know all the intimate details of what's going on. So when we hear something like that, it's very impactful. To just hear it, you take it out of context to some extent. But that was very. It's things like that show you there's so many groups that they're looking for the next haunted place to see the brick fly through the air and we were there, we experienced it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you go into a house and you've got people waiting for the brick to fly through the air, But behind you is a family that are all huddled together looking at you with that hope of, please find out what's wrong. Please make it stop because I can't sleep, or I don't have the money to leave this house, but I can't stay. So when you get that, you see the effect that this has on people and that you may be able to help them in some small way. It really kind of smacks you alongside the head, and it really focused us to, this is to help people that are going through this. If we happen to gather evidence in the background, fantastic. But let's not make that what the people see us doing. We're there to help them.
I don't think anybody could have said it better, and I guess to kind of echo in on that, I learned through many years of law enforcement that there is value in the telling and the listening, and having someone. These people are basically, victims. They've had something happen beyond their power to control that they didn't want, and it's so important to have a sympathetic, attentive listener. And even if you can't solve it, just going through the experience of having somebody take them seriously has value in and of itself.
Absolutely. Very, very true.
So I want to kind of bring this to, some sort of conclusion. What do you see happening in this field? What do you envision for the future of paranormal investigations?
With the popularity of these shows on TV, showing these groups going in and casting demons out, and it's very dramatic. It's very television. You've got 30 minutes of entertainment. If it's not entertaining, then you're not going to see that show on TV next season. So there's going to be a little bit of a sauce on top of the meat, just to make it more enticing. The reality is a little bit less dramatic, I guess, but there's so many people who want to get involved because they see it from TV. So they are enamored by what they're seeing on TV and that aspect of it, versus seeing the fear of the families and get into it to help. So I would say that the people that are involved in WSPIR are people that have had experiences and want to help others through their learnings. And then there's the people who are just very interested in the phenomenon and want to learn more, either because they've had experiences and want to come to an understanding. And so they learn how to do the procedures and the protocols, how the equipment is used or how it's not used, usually. People that are sensitive and want to hone their ability or reassure themselves that feeling they get really is when they're in an energy, and how better to do that than in a group with other people like that. And they can say, oh, yes, yes. When you feel that fluttering in the bottom of your stomach, that means there's something around us. So we've got the people from the paranormal interest side trying to learn more. And then we've got people contacting us because they're going through experiences. So we try to do education for the people that are on one side, and then we do investigations to help the people on the other side.
I just love the fact that you're about service. That is totally coming from the right place in the heart. And I do want to announce at this time that the chat room is going to be open. We're going to accept questions from the chat room, InceptionRadioNetwork.com. We're also going to accept phone calls, anyone who has a question out there. And please call 888-919-2355 if you want to call in a question. And meanwhile, Darren, you and I can just continue and we'll see what happens. And as you pointed out earlier, that's part of the fascination here, is that all of it's unpredictable.
It truly is. The moment you think you know what's going on, that's when you get... Exactly.
So I know that people have a lot of preconceptions, which of course has a lot to do with what's popular on television. I mean, it's not really too big of a stretch if you have a closed down mental institution or an old mansion, to think, okay, there could be some sort of residual activity or some strange energy here. But what are unlikely locations where you've been called?
A condo in the middle of a city that was built in the 90s.
What happened?
There's activity going on where people are seeing, I call it light play, shadows. The intensity of a shadow thickens to the point where you can actually see a silhouette, and it is physically moving. And the people wake up and they look at it and they go, "No, it's just me. My eyes are playing tricks on me." But then it kind of does something that can't be explained by reflection. And then to find out that they're on the upper story of a condo, so the light play is either a plane or there is no explanation. So it's kind of, why would there be a spirit there? So it could be because of an object in the place. It could be because of a person. And in the one case I'm kind of alluding to, it was actually because of a person who had passed and their attachment to them, trying to get them a message. And unfortunately, the person that was supposed to be the receiver of the message did not want to know about it. It's like, no, this I don't accept this into my life, so I just don't want to know about it. Because, yeah, but it's a message for you. It's like, no, it's, they had their time and I'm alive and they're not, and I just don't want to know. So it's kind of those standoff until they are open and willing to accept whatever that message is. The spirit of the family member is going to keep on trying to get them to listen to the message. And it was confirmed that both members of the family are very stubborn, and they're proving it.
That seems so sad. I mean, here's an opportunity to find something out about whatever's past the big mystery that we're all going to face, and you would knowingly turn down a chance to find out anything about what's beyond.
But through years of investigation and interview, doesn't that kind of lead you to believe that they kind of know what's going to be told to them or said to them, and they just don't want to hear it?
Exactly. It's kind of like the people who walk by the graveyard and whistle late at night and tell you very adamantly that they don't believe in spirits.
Exactly. I like the people who say they don't believe in this sort of thing and then begin to tell me about all the experiences they've had where something didn't happen.
Yes. There's the Shakespeare line about the lady doth protest too much.
Exactly. But it's been life-changing for me.
How did you get into it?
Just a curiosity. My interest spanned the cryptozoology stuff, the metaphysical aspects, the whole pyramid power, the Bermuda Triangle. Anything that was not yet known was of interest. That these things beyond our comprehension existed or potentially existed. Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Yeti. It was just fascinating. And it was